So, okay, so here we go. So today we are on the Monday between Parshas Baaloscha and Parshas Shlach. And I think it's in order to understand the connection between the parshios and to understand that really one is an outgrowth of the other. And we have to understand how all of this fits together. As we've been following the unfolding of the book of Bamidbar, and I know there was a Shiur on Shabbos which we couldn't record. Some of you were there, yes. But a little recap would be okay, and we'll go further because I know. What's that?
Where do you have a Shiur?
There was Rebbitzin. What's the name of the host? Is
Other block.
Mrs. Block.
It's a Shabbos Shiur, rotating.
Yes. So I'm going to give a quick recap of what we spoke about on Shabbos, so some of you weren't there, you shouldn't miss out, and then we'll go forward into Shlach. And I'll start with something from the Rabbeinu Bachaye. Rabbeinu Bachaye quotes a pasuk in Mishlei Chaf Aleph Lamed Aleph as an introduction to Parsha Shlach, a very profound pasuk. And by the way, Mishlei is probably the richest source of material for personal growth and psychological understanding of people. That was really what Shlomo was. Shlomo HaMelech was giving seminars, literally, lahavdil, to the entire world, would come and listen to things that had to do with human nature, human behavior, that were shaveh l'kol nefesh. And this is why non-Jews could appreciate it as well. And they saw that the wisdom of the Torah could help them improve their lives. And that's really, ultimately, the role of the Jewish people, is to provide wisdom for living. That's our job. First we got to start with ourselves. You don't, as they say, if you don't have it, you can't give it away. So Shlomo said as follows. Shlomo Melech said, "Sus muchan liyom milchama v'lashem hatshua." The horse must be prepared for the day of war, the day of battle. But the tshuah is from Hashem. Now let's analyze the word tshuah. Means what? What does teshua mean? Saving, right? Hoshia es amecha. Now, when you need to be saved, it's not a great thing. Well, you're going to go to war, but someone's going to save you. 1 second. That doesn't sound very optimistic for our chances of victory, right? It's like, you're going to get wiped out, but in the last minute, somebody's going to come and save your neck. What is Shlomo Melech trying to say here? What is this wisdom here? So Rabbeinu Chaya says as follows. He says, the truth is, and I'll read you a couple of his words, so beautiful, that sheyaseh lekol, a person sheyaseh lekol davar sheyitztarich lasos ubederech hateva kol ma shebekocho. We are being asked by Hashem to do everything we can possibly do al derech hateva. V'yimsor hashar b'dei shamayim. But what's beyond our abilities and what's beyond our reach, we don't say it's not going to happen because we don't have the solution. We keep our eye on our objective and we say Hashem will help us the rest of the way. Now that's a little bit difficult because if indeed Hashem says, well, my mother tells me very often until today, what are you going to do when you grow up? Hashem helps those who help themselves. Hashem helps those who help themselves. That's a colloquial way of saying, lahavdil, sus muchan liyom milchama v'lashem hateshua. But what are we really saying? If you need to be able to calculate things b'derech hateva, then what right do you have limsor hashar b'dei shamayim? Why are you making objectives for yourself that are seemingly not achievable through normal means?
I don't think there's a contradiction in a way, because in life you have to go out and, let's say, you say by word, you have to get up and get a job, and Hashem has to give you the parnasa, but you have to go out and do something.
Oh, okay. So, but what does it mean? V'yimsor hashar b'dei shamayim. Yimsor hashar. What I'm saying is, what's the rest that he's referring to? So, listen to a few more words of Ben Ruchaya. Listen carefully. He says, Ki hanes eneno chal ela b'chisaron hateva. Miracles happen when nature can no longer provide an answer. V'ikar yitziras ha'adam banu al midos ha'teva. People are primarily based on teva. That's our primary reality. But we do have another reality, which is the miraculous part of ourselves. Now, the truth is that we can talk about how much of teva is a nace, right? And how much of a nace is teva, correct? We could debate that long and hard. But says the Rabbi Bechaya at least, Al kain yitztarich sheyasa ha'adam pu'ulos v'inyonim sheyachonos. A person has to do actions and various interventions that will be a preparation, lahasig bahem chefzo, to achieve your goal, v'lamod al mishalos libo, and the desire of your heart. Ki kishirotza laleches lemilchama al oivav, if you're going to go to war with an enemy, sheroi lo sheyavin kleizayin, sheyachin kleizayin v'susim umerkavos liyam milchama. Don't go unequipped. You have to come with your weapons. You have to be prepared to come with swords. You can't say, I'm going to sit there and daven, and then Hashem is going to provide the Yeshua. Shim eino mechin, if you don't prepare. V'yismoch al hanes, if what you're doing is you're relying on a nes, yimaser biyad oivav. Chas v'sholom, says the Rabbeinu Chaim, it's not going to work.
Yaakov Avinu is an example of this. When he
Correct. He did three things. What did Yaakov Avinu do? It's a very good example.
Presents,
Right?
sent the present, then he prepared for war, and then he prayed.
Right. And by the way, in that order, he didn't pray first. He prepared a political solution, a negotiated solution, an appeasement, and then he said, if that doesn't work, I'm prepared to fight, because he saw it wasn't working, and then finally he davened. So Rabbeinu Chaya is saying that although Hashem will bring the Yeshua, but it's incumbent upon us to go as far as we possibly can. My question only is, so where do you draw the line? Can you try to do something that's beyond your rational ability? What right do you have? What right do you have?
What do you,
In other words, can I say, I'll give you a good example. One thing that happened, lahavdil, at the beginning of the Yishuv here at the time post World War II, right? The world's opinion was that it would be very foolish for Israel to declare statehood for a very simple reason. That the Arabs will not accept it, and they will bear down with all their armies, and they'll be destroyed, annihilated. And if you would have asked the Shaila of the Gedolei Hador at the time, I venture to say, Narea 1 would have said, go ahead, it's a great idea, declare the state. I don't think that a Gedolei Hador would have said that. I'd say, try to appease, try to wait. And they were mitchanein, the nations of the world pleaded and threatened, don't do it. So these few people who took upon themselves that achrayut, so on the side of history, right, at least if you're not Satmar, it was a chen Hashem. There was chen be'eni Hashem to that decision. So how do you understand that? Were they wrong or were they right? If you say, well, sus muchan liyom milchama, that they were prepared for war. Not. Although I did hear a story once. And I'll mention this because I'm on my way to Kivrei Tzadikim in Morocco. So of course that's the family of the Baba Sali. Abu Chatzera family is the most famous one, and I'm going to be away for 2 weeks. I'm sorry. I'm going to America for Simcha, and I'll be here. So next 2 Mondays I will not be here. But I will take kvitlach from all of you. So the Baba Sali was Melamed Schus on Ben Gurion. And I'll tell you what he did in a moment, but first what Ben Gurion said. When they came to him and said, okay, you have a choice. You can declare the state and will be attacked from all sides, or you cannot declare the state and just hang on. So his response was at the time, what are our chances of winning? And his military people said to him, and remember, it wasn't exactly the most impressive army in the world. They said Holocaust survivors, young men, young women. Not exactly what we would call Milchemet, Hashem's army, but it was what it was. And they said 50-50. And on that, he thought for a moment, and he says, we've never had better odds than that.
Who said that?
Ben Gurion. We never had better than a 50-50 chance in history. So let's go for it. Okay. So why do I say that? Because if it would have been clear that they would have been destroyed, then maybe you don't have a right to do anything. But if it's an opportunity and there's some noble cause attached to it, all right? Now, they didn't think not everybody agrees that he had a noble cause, but, apparently Hashem did give a certain blessing, obviously, because it did work out, at least for the most part. Although we did lose the old city of Yerushalayim, which is pretty bad. But if it's a noble cause and there's some legitimate logic that we can handle it al pi teva, that would seem to be what Rabbeinu Bachai is referring to. In other words, let's say you're going to invest your money. And you just want to make money. You don't have a particular thing. It's not like you said, if I make money, I'm going to give such and such to tzedakah. No, it's an investment. So you shots it up. You don't say, well, let's go. Hashem is going to give me the victory here. That's just like rolling the dice. But if your kavanah is l'shem shamayim, and you are aligning yourself with Hashem's will, and you have something that more or less makes sense, then apparently that's what, at least in my understanding, an initial understanding, what Rabbeinu Bachai was saying. You have to believe that you could win the war with the sus, but you may not necessarily. And if you falter, the tshuva will be b'yad Hashem. If my plan falters, then the tshuva, the plan B, will be that Hashem will help. Because I'm doing this for Hashem. I'm a shaliach of the Rabbono Shel Olam. If I'm a shaliach of the Rabbono Shel Olam, well, that gives me a huge sikui, as they say, to be successful. So back to Ben Gurion for a second and Baba Sali. So one day, he was a completely miraculous person. Tell you a bunch of stories. When I get back, I'll tell you the stories. I've told some of the stories. But, he used to have a driver on, some sort of car, and, if they didn't have gas, he would just say, drive. He would say, put water in. And, of course, the car would make it there and then make it back and then drop dead when they got back because he was completely lamala min hateva. But one day he told his driver, we're going to Sidei Boker, where Ben Gurion was buried. And Baba Sali says he's going to Sidei Boker. We're going to Sidei Boker. And he gets in the car and drives down. There must be an hour or so from where Netivot, something like that. Maybe less. In those days, maybe more. And they get to the place, and the driver drops him off, and Baba Sali goes into the cemetery, and he's standing by the kever, and he's davening. Ben Gurion. And then after a while, he rouses himself, he's satisfied, and he says, okay, we accomplished. And he comes back to the car, and they're driving back, and the driver's a little bit curious, like, what's going on over here? And he said, Ben Gurion was going through a terrible din in Shemayim, because some of the things that he set in motion had very, very, very bad implications. And I don't have to go into any details. You could imagine. But I came to daven for him, to put in a good word. Why? Because in his merit, many, many Jews, and particularly from the Arab lands, at least 1 million, came to Eretz Yisrael. So if you want to put something on his scale in his favor, That's something that should be heard as a piece of evidence in the Bezdin Shalmala. So, again, if he was a shliach to bring 1 million Sephardic Jews to Eretz Yisrael, that's not a bad thing. Okay, and being a perfect shliach, as we learn in Parashat Shlach, is not a simple thing. Even the most righteous person can fall into the trap of not being a good shliach, or I'll put it this way, not being a shliach at all, but being but going in self-interest and self-reliance only. So if we just use that as an introduction, the challenge in Parsha Shlach can boil down to the following. We could ask many questions. Why did Moshe agree to send anybody? Why take that kind of risk? Why did he ask them if the Aretz is Tova? What do you mean? Why would you give them an opening to fail? Why did Klal Yisrael even think about sending these people? Like, what was the point? They had Moshe Rabbeinu. And why did Hashem say it like Shlach Lecha and not Shlach? Okay. So, if we understand this a little bit like the Rabbeinu B'chaye, Moshe was under the assumption that the Meraglim would be his shluchim, and that they really wanted to be Moshe's shaliach. The Rechaim HaKadosh basically says, another great Sephardic rabbi from Morocco, he says, they appeared to want to do the shlichus of Moshe, but that was not their intention. They actually wanted to make their own decision, and they were free agents. Hence, when they came back, they made their own evaluation and said, it's not something that we feel we can do. Because they were neither Moshe's, neither Hashem's shliach. Hashem says, I don't want these guys. You're not my shluchim. If you think they can be your shluchim, go ahead, Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? So, they did not, even though Moshe sent them, they were not shluchim, they were meraglim. There's a difference between being a shaliach and a meragel. A meragel is going to make their own decisions. They're not bound to anybody. They're going to make the decision, they're going to make their own opinion. Okay, so now let's go back and understand how we got here. Why did this happen? Because there was a tremendous transformation that took place. Now I'm going to give a little summary to what we spoke about on Shabbos from Parshas Baloscha. A couple of questions. The Torah is divided into how many svarim? We mentioned this last time. 7. Chatzvu Amudea Shiva. What is the 5th Chumash based on this? We have Bereshis, number 1. Shmos, number 2. Then you have Vayikra. Bamidbar part A, which is all the way up until Perek Yud Aleph, until Vayehi bin Soa Aaron, right?
That's a book in himself.
And that's a book in itself. And then we have the second half of Bamidbar and Sefer Dvarim. Why do we need 7? We always say Chamisha Chumshei Torah. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, everything up until right before Vayehi bin Soa was positive, right? The Jewish people were where? They were 1 month after the Mishkan. And this is how the Ramban learns that Torah goes in sequence unless the Torah tells us it's out of sequence. That's the Ramban's Shita. And unlike Rashi, Ramban. Ramban says, I have to assume I'm reading the Torah like a 5-year-old would read the Torah, like a 10-year-old read the Torah. If it says it, I'm assuming that everything fits together and goes in sequential order, unless the Torah obviously tells me something out of order, like a flashback or a flash forward, whatever it might be. But, so therefore, everything till then was really going well. The Mishkan was up. The Levium were being selected. The camp was being organized. And by the way, last time I told you something, and I'm going to put it on record, that what I told you was according to the Ramban, but not according to Rashi. Rashi says that the sequence here was all throwback to the first day of the Mishkan, whereas the Ramban says, no, things started in Bamidbar, B'chodesh Hasheni, and they moved B'chodesh Hasheni. What's the difference? That the Levium were selected in the 2nd month. The Levium were not ready to work the first day of the Mishkan, They weren't even ready to work after 30 days of the Mishkan. They weren't even counting until then. Because how could you count the Levium until you count Klal Yisrael first? And they're stepping in to take over. That's how we learned it last time, correct? And all this was being prepared until they started a journey. Now, when did they start the journey? Very, very important. The 20th day of Iyar. Why the 20th day of Iyar? It's like so random. And how many days did they travel before they got to... And that 3-day journey was captured in that little book called Vayehi ben Soa Aron. That is the story of the 3 days. Which 3 days? 20th of Iyar, 21st of Iyar, 22nd of Iyar, till the 23rd of Iyar. Okay? What happened in those 3 days? Klal Yisrael was on the move. Everybody was organized. There was a Machane Leviah, there was a Machane Yisrael, there was an Aron Kodesh. And then what happens? Vayiyam kimitonin imra. The very beginning of the 6th Sefer of the Sefer Torah is that people started to complain during the 3 days. The Ramban learns that those 3 days were the 3 days of that journey on the 20th of Iyar, not the 3 days of the journey when they left Har Sinai. But this is really like the leaving of Har Sinai. This really was the first 3 day journey for all intents and purposes. Okay? There was no.
How did they stay at Har Sinai for a year?
Yeah, well, yeah, because remember, Moshe goes up on Vav Sivan, comes down when? Shavasar B'Tammuz, breaks the Luchos, and goes back up until when? He comes down and tells them they're forgiven, and he goes back up on Rosh Chodesh Elul and stays till Yom Kippur. And then after Yom Kippur, they get the Sivui to build the Mishkan, and they have it already by when? Yeah, but not later than Chafei Kislev. Not later. It might have been sooner, but not later. And then what do? They hang out from Chafei Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar, till Rosh Chodesh Nisan, right? Now, the Rosh Chodesh Nisan was already the 8th day, so already the last week of Adar, the Mishkan was being assembled by Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And he's the last week, which is ironic because Moshe, of course, is associated with Adar and in the month of Adar. And Adar is always the prelude to Nisan. Now you understand why, because Adar was the original prelude to the Hakamas HaMishkan, which was on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And then 30 full days, everything's fine. According to Ramban, no Levium. No Levium. The only people working were who? 3 people. Moshe was already not working starting Rosh Chodesh. That was his last day of work. And then Aaron and, Elazar and Itamar take over. And we don't have the Levium set up yet, according to Ramban. There was just this nice machane of the Shechina. And then we're warned, like we said last time, get rid of the people who can't handle the Shechina. We got to create the camps. We got to create distance. So they finally did that. And of course, there was the people who needed Pesach Sheni. When was Pesach Sheni?
30 days after Pesach.
Which is Yud Daled Iyar. So they could have started their journey, if you think about it, on the 15th day of Iyar. What's wrong with the 15th day of Iyar? Great day. What's wrong with the 15th day of Iyar? Well, they ate it at night. Remember, Pesach Sheni doesn't work like Pesach, our Pesach Rishon. Pesach Rishon is all 7 days. They only have one mitzvah, and that's to eat the Karban Pesach at night, and they can even have chametz hanging out in their house. There's no Bali Raya, Bali Matzeh. It's just eating a Karban. That's all they do is eat the Karban. The Karban has to be Pesach dik, Amatzis and Rorim, okay? And you say Hallel over it. That's what the Mishnah says, but there is nothing else. They could have packed up in the morning and left. It wouldn't have been nice, like 1 month after. No, they wait 5 more days. Why 5 more days? That's question number 1. Yeah?
Waiting for Miriam? Waiting for Miriam. Is it during that time?
Miriam's problem is afterwards. The first thing that went wrong, that happened afterwards. The first thing that went wrong is 3 days of grumbling. What we call in Yiddish, kvetching, grudging, right? Grumbling. according to the Meforshim, different things. According to the Meforshim, the first 3 days, Meshech Chochmah says, very interesting thing. They were grumbling that the Levium took over.
What?
The leaders were grumbling that they were displaced by the Bechorim. And that's why who dies during that first 3 days? What happens in the first 3 days? They said, the Torah tells us, and I'll read you the exact words. It says, Vayim k'misonim ra ba'oznei Hashem, vayishma Hashem, vayichar apo, vativar bam eish, a fire breaks out, vatochel b'kitzei hamachaneh, an edge of the camp. Mefarshim say here, api Chazal, the edge of the camp can either be the leaders or the lowest people, the most pashat people, the least, how shall I say, emotionally and morally developed of the people. And what were the complaints? 2 different complaints. If it was the leaders, so says the Meshech Chochmah, they were saying, we're the Bechorim, and all of a sudden, these Levium are in charge, and we don't even get to come close to the Mishkan anymore. Not happy. If you say it was the simple people, they said, oi, we're schlepping on the road, and where are we going, and what are we doing? And they're not thinking about, we're going to Eretz Yisrael, and this. They're thinking about, I'm tired. And they're not inspired. What?
They want to go back to Mitzrayim?
No.
Not at this point.
No.
Not yet.
But they're like, why we gotta, and we're traveling in the day, we're traveling according to some at night, and even though all miracles are going on, it's according to the Ramban anyway, the Aron Kodesh traveled in front of them on that journey only. Otherwise, it traveled in the middle of them. But in the first journey, it was like I don't know what you call it, like we said before, a massive weapon of war to exterminate everything. It still exterminated everything later on, but it was just like, follow me, like, acharai, like, let's go, let's tackle this. And they had nothing to worry about, and the man was with them, and there was nothing missing for them. So that was Hashem's anger, and it says, okay, if there was really, something to grumble about, fine. But you're just grumblers. Just bad-spirited, just nasty disposition. Wake up in the morning. Like my son says when he has to go to school. Oh, we hate school. What school? No, we just hate school. We hate it, everything about it, That's till he gets there. But, rather stay home and play. So just bad-spirited people, and not necessarily their fault, but they're just, unfortunately not well-developed character-wise, but the leaders also died. So who were those leaders? So Chazal tell us the 70 elders that were at Har Sinai with Moshe Rabbeinu.
Are they the 70 elders from Israel?
The original 70 elders that, were, now, you have to know who there's 2 different 70 elders that we speak about. One is the elite leaders that were in Mitzrayim, that Moshe came to when Moshe first arrives in Mitzrayim, right? He's talking to the elite leaders. They passed away right here. Who are they replaced with? The taskmasters. So the taskmasters are the people who were of more, I would say, more simple nature. They weren't the great scholars. They weren't prophets. They were not prophets. Right. That worked for the Egyptians to be in charge of the Jewish laborers. Well, not quite, because they reversed. They did stand up to the Mitzrim and were smitten. They tried to protect the Jewish people from punishment when they didn't come up with their quotas and whatever. Those people who were beaten regularly and they were trying to help, they become the new leaders. Now, one second. Intellectual giants, they didn't necessarily have to be, right? They had to be people of courage. They had to be people of excellent character. They had to have endurance. They had to be able to stand up to pain. And they had to be inspiring, because people who are beaten down, right, and have to get up every day and produce, if there's nobody to inspire them, you're in trouble. In fact, some of the Forshim say that Moshe gave them from his nevuah. It's like they just logged into Moshe's nevuah, the nevuah network. Nevuah network. They were, Moshe just connected them in. And they understood everything what Moshe was saying. And Moshe raised them up to the level of Navi, Al Pi Hashem, but on their own. They were worthy of it because what they did, the Mesiras Nefesh that they did for Klal Yisrael, very different type of leader. Very different. And so the question is why? Now, one second.
Also, Yisro left it.
Not according to Ramban. According to Ramban, Yisro stayed. But it's debatable. Again, Ramban versus Rashi and some of the other Chazal, that he went back. But whether or not, we do have Maimer Chazal that says the sons of Yisro were given a portion, and not Stam a portion. They were given a piece of land, like Lahavdil. The embassy gets reserved a piece of land. The Beis HaMikdash had a reserved piece of land that was designated for it, and it was in Yericho as an exchange, like till we decide where the Beis HaMikdash is going to be, the temporary embassy of the Beis HaMikdash is going to be in Yericho, which is ironic because Yericho is the place where they really entered Eretz Yisrael. And that was the key to Eretz Yisrael. Which is why it's such a bad thing that we gave away the keys to Eretz Yisrael, but let's not go there. And
But Jews were not allowed to settle there.
right. And there's a whole story about that during the time of Yaacov. He just, right? He dafka wanted to build the walls of Yericho, and there were punishments, etc. Okay, so let's understand what happened in this 3-day journey. The next thing that we see is that the journey is captured in this 5th Sefer Torah, Moshe's davening. How many letters are in that little parsha of 2 psukim? 85 letters. Connected the word peh, right? It's about Moshe's prayer. What does Moshe say? Kuma Hashem, and then what do we add? What do we end with? Uvenucha Yomar. Just like when we take the Torah out now, we use those 2 psukim. Torah's coming out, we're on the move, and we put it back. Those 85 letters are considered their own Torah, so that if it's written on a piece of parchment, you're allowed on Shabbos to go and save that scroll, even if you violate carrying the Rabbanon, to save that little scroll. What do you mean save that scroll? You don't want to save it on Shabbos, so you're violating Shabbos? Yes, it's a little Sefer Torah, go violate it. Go violate Shabbos de Rabbanon for it. And what is it?
What happened? I didn't understand.
If you have those 85 letters of Vayhi bin Saron on a parchment, on a cloth, so we know in Mishnah and Shabbos, the Gemara Shabbos tells us, Matzilin Kisvei Kodesh Mneglecha. Kol Kisvei Kodesh. We go and save holy books from the fire. It's considered a holy book. You're allowed to save it as a din of, yes, why only that sefer? And why, it's 85 letters. I mean, all svarim, but it qualifies as a sefer, even though it's just this little thing. And what is it, why is bracketed by? Why is it a sefer? Second of all, why the nuns, and why do they travel on the 20th day of Iyar? Let's go through the question. Number one, and then of course afterwards, everything falls apart. That they start complaining about the avatichim, about the watermelon and the pickles, and then Moshe says a fascinating thing. He said, listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. It seems to be very out of character for Moshe Rabbeinu. We always say Moshe Rabbeinu was running after the little shepsela that took him to Har Sinai, and he would care for every little creature, and all of a sudden, it says, Vayishma Moshe esa'am bochel lemishpachosav. Everybody started complaining. By now they were complaining about not just the journey, but they were complaining about the food, and they were complaining about the mitzvos that they had to do, and they were restricted, and they had to be from, and they couldn't carry on and party as much as they wanted, and be with whoever they wanted to be with. That's why it says lemishpachosav, ish lepetach oholo, because Moshe added to them a series of people that they're not allowed to be married to, and not allowed to have relations with, and they were like, why are you putting all these restrictions on us? What do we need this for? And comes Moshe Rabbeinu back to Hashem and says something that seems very out of character. Vayomer Moshe el Hashem, Lama hari osa lavdecha. Moshe's complaining now. Why did you do this to me? V'lama lo matzati chen beinecha. Why don't you? What, you don't like me anymore, Hashem? I thought you loved me. Remember you told me on Har Sinai that, you really liked me and you let me even see the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim and everything like that? And all of a sudden, what? I'm fired? Lasum es masa kol ha'am hazeh alai, that you're putting the burden of this entire nation on me? One second. And up until now, it wasn't on you.
Yeah.
It wasn't on you. I told you about this at the burning bush. We went through this already. What happened here? Says Moshe Rabbeinu. Ha'anochi harisi es kol ha'am hazeh. Am I the parent of these children? Imanochi lilitihu. Did I give birth to them? Ki tomer alai sa'eu bechakecha. That you're telling me carry it in my what's a chek? A chek is my lap. Ka'asher yisa ha'omein es hayonek. Like a nurse nurses a baby. By the way, he doesn't say omenet. He says omein. A male nurse. It's a very good profession these days, by the way. It's really a lot of money.
So how does a man nurse a baby?
That's exactly his point. Al ha'adama shenishbata levosav. You want me to be a male nurse and nurse this baby, this people like a baby they are, and I'm going to have to bring them to Eretz Yisrael like this? Continues Moshe. Ma'ayin li basar latet lekol ha'am hazeh. Where am I going to get meat for all these people? Ki yivku alai, they're crying to me. Lemor tina lano basav enochela. I'm hungry. Give me meat. Now they did have slav come on more than one occasion. The slav used to come in irregularly, but what they wanted slav every day, and lots of it. So it wasn't like a treat, like you buy for Yantif, a little, something.
That's quail.
The sauteed liver,
What about the meat that they had, the beef that they had?
Great question.
Why did
So the restriction there was, some Meforshim say, is that they had to bring it to the Mishkan and make it a carbon, and you give portions to the Kohanim. I'm like, not worth it. Plus, if they slaughter them, what are they going to have for Eretz Yisrael, right? See, in Israel, when they get farmland, this is going to be their parnasa. You eat it up now, there's nothing left. Remember how Menashe, Reuven, God came? That's their business. They're going to be cowboys. Lahavdil.
Okay.
Says Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo uchal anochi levadi laseis es ha'am hazeh. I cannot do this alone. You took away the 70 elders. I have nobody with me. Ki kaved mimeni. It's too heavy for me. Too heavy for Moshe? Moshe, you split the Yamsuf. You gave it to Paro. You came out of Mitzrayim. And just a couple of people yelling about they don't like the cuisine, and you're giving up? Look what he says. Vim kacha at oseli. Notice the word at. If you make me an at, hargeni naharog, kill me. I'm suicidal. Moshe says, I'm suicidal. Imatzati chen beinecha va'al era bera'asi, meaning al era bera'asam. I'm not going to see these people go down the tubes like this. What in the world happened to Moshe Rabbeinu? Let's understand. So to understand this, I'm going to tell you a story that I heard from Rabbi Beryl Wine many years ago on this parsha. And he said as follows. Remember what they said? They said, Zachar Noah Hadaga, remember the fish, and remember the... So, he said, when he first became a rabbi in Miami Beach, or the 41st Street Shul, if you've ever been down there, you know about that. He was invited to speak at one of his Balabatim Simchas in Borough Park. And they said to him, listen, Borough Park and Miami are not the same. In Borough Park, you'll get up to speak, and people will listen to what you have to say. But in Borough Park, you're going to speak at a simcha, not one person is going to listen. They're going to be talking all the way through. You're going to have to shout over them. You should just accept that. And you have to get up and give your talk and not expect anybody to really give you the courtesy of listening to you. Just be prepared. So he said, fine. He gets up to speak. And he's trying to shout over the crowd. And finally he says, it was like a bris or something, or some sort of suda. Somebody gets up in the back of the room and goes, where are the pickles? And he says, that was it. He was done. He just couldn't go on. It's one thing, you're not listening. But somebody screaming, where are the pickles? Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm Moshe Rabbeinu, not Moshe Imenu. Moshe Rabbeinu is not Moshe Imenu. What does that mean? When you are a Rebbe, imagine a Rebbe in a school. And what's the earliest that you have really a Rebbe? What's the first age? Everybody knows from their children and their grandchildren or whoever, your nieces, your nephews, whoever it is. What's the age that you bring a child to the Rebbe? What age? About 6 years old, right? That's actually halacha, 5 or 6, depending on the child. All right, you may bring him a precocious child earlier. You bring him to Rebbe at 3 years old when he gets his halakha, when he gets his upsharing. But there you're basically putting a little honey on an olive, and he understands from the honey, he barely understands from the olive. Moshe says, I can't teach infants. What happens if you would bring a bunch of 2-year-olds to first grade? They're going to cry. They're going to be needed to be cleaned up regularly. They're going to want to eat. They might not want to eat, the healthiest thing or in the nicest way. Think of the poor Rebbe with a classroom of 32-year-olds. 32-year-olds alone, trying to carry, without teacher's assistance, Today the kindergartens all have assistants and assistants to the assistants plus the volunteers. It's not what it was. I'm going to carry a classroom of 32-year-olds? Hashem, kill me. It's not for me. I'm Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not Moshe Imenu. And that's why he says, in my opinion, V'im kacha at oseli. If you're going to make me into an at, if you're going to make me into a mommy, that's not who I am anymore. Now, what do you say? But Moshe Rabbeinu, you did that at the beginning, didn't you? He goes, yes. But something happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. What happened to Moshe Rabbeinu? He was on Har Sinai 3 times, 40 days and 40 nights. Did he eat?
No.
Did he drink?
No.
Is he human? Kacha kacha. Rambam says, Niskadesh kimo malach. He became a quasi angel. Say the Mefarshim, that's why. It's the Rechaim HaKadosh says that's why. He said, how am I going to get meat? He says, because Moshe Rabbeinu and meat were not in touch anymore. What kind of food was Moshe Rabbeinu eating? Man. It's man, you know that? He didn't even eat that. What did he? He didn't eat lechem, but he perhaps, and I'll say this maybe even logically, did eat man on Har Sinai. Everybody thinks he didn't eat anything. It's possible he didn't eat anything. I'm not saying not. But based on what some of the Forshim say, that angels eat man, so to speak, also, whatever that means. But there is a form of nutrition going on. His body was sustained. And Mitzvah Hashem, when we get to that level again, our bodies will be sustained by Hashem energetically or whatever food we're being...
Calories?
What? It's definitely calorie-free, and it definitely does not have sweeteners because it's sweet on its own, and it tastes like anything you like. It provides as much water as you can possibly drink in the desert. It says the extra water would go and irrigate all the fields. It was colored like a diamond. It was something spectacular. And Moshe could deal with that, and Moshe's schus provided that, but not a big fat hamburger. Wendy's. When I grew up, what did they say? 2 old beef patties, pickle sauce, lettuce, cheese, something onions on a sesame seed bun. That's what they used to say about the Big Mac. What? That was McDonald's? McDonald's, yeah, Big Mac. Big. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I can't do that. I don't do that. So he needs help. What kind of help? He needs help who knows people, who were the common folk, who were in the pits with them, understand them, speak their language. And those are the new Shivim Skenim. Okay? That's why. Because otherwise, as the Ramban asks, so he's got 70 guys. Okay, now where's the beef? So now where's the beef? Hello? Because you have 70 people with you, all of a sudden now you do have meat to serve everybody? No, you don't need meat. Because with those 70 people, they're going to talk to them. And remember, you have 70, right? How many Sarei Asaros were there? I mean, Sarei Alafim. So there were 600,000 people, and that gives you about 600 people, right? So if you have 70 to deal with 600 people, everybody has less than 10 to work with. You know what I mean? It's one-on-one. I'll deal with it. I'll get the Sarei Laf involved, and they'll get the Sarei Meos involved, and they'll get the Sarei Chamishim involved. You have all these people set up. But I can't do it without that type of person, with that type of leader, who's more of a mommy than a Rebbe. Okay? Now, sorry.
Is there a mourning period for the 70 elders?
Nope.
And they were buried in the mikvah, they weren't carried the bones.
They were incinerated. There was nothing to carry. They were incinerated. Just like, we don't know Abiyu, none of Abiyu, we say, the Gemara says that they did not, right. It is very possible, I shouldn't say it. It could be that the fire went out and incinerated them internally, like people said about Nadav Abiyu. It's very possible.
But wasn't there like a rope that went in and like pulled them out?
That was not of an Abiyu.
Right.
But we don't know anything about these Shivim Skeni, what happened to them. We don't see a record that they were buried. Maybe they are, and maybe they have to look. There probably are midrashim about what happened to them, and they probably did have Tchias HaMesim when they came into Eretz Yisrael and so on and so forth eventually. I'm not saying no. But we don't have any record of it. Like Nadav and Avihu, we are told that their bodies were retrieved. Here, Chazal say, Taveira, there was a fire, and that's it. Okay, so now let me just... That was for Nadav and Avihu. Yeah. So now, let me just bring this together. So, this was what was supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen is and then, that explains, by the way, why Miriam was upset with Moshe and said Lashon Hara against him. Now, think why. What was she really saying? She's saying, why did you divorce your Isha Kushis? Why did you divorce your beautiful wife? Moshe was divorced from that type of experience. Et biti natati l'ish hazeh. We say women marry men. They don't marry malachim. Right? They just, it's not a good shidduch. Not a good shidduch. It's a different realm. Miriam didn't want Moshe to leave that realm. She always wanted Moshe, right? This is Malamed Schus on Miriam. She always loved Moshe.
And because she also told her father that when he
yes! And that this is her thing. Like, you have no right. Yeah, you have no right. You're just like us. And Hashem gives them, Moshe and Aaron, a rude awakening. They're tamei, and he comes to them and says, oh yeah, you're ready to talk to me like Moshe's ready to talk to me? And they said, Heve Mayim, bring me water, because we're tamei. You get it? You get it? You're not on the level of Moshe anymore. Moshe has elevated to a different level. That doesn't mean that he has to leave you, but it means that you're going to have to step up to where he is. And if you can't, then you're going to have to relate to Moshe through an intermediary. It's not enough that Moshe is the intermediary of Hashem, and that you have Kohanim, and that you have Leviim. But beyond them, you need the Shivim Skenim. You need the on-the-ground folks. And all that was put into place, or needed to be put into place. But at that point, the minute that he selects the 70 Zakanim, what do Eldad and Medad begin to say? At that very moment. Because really they lost the connection to Moshe Rabbeinu. And I said, my wife spoke about a Hasidic concept which helps understand this as well. There's one concept called Malik Kol Almim and one concept of Saviv Kol Almim. Hashem relates to us in one of two ways. One is from the inside out. Hashem puts an neshama in our bodies, and the neshama is struggling to make us great. And it's in a death match with the guf. Who's going to win? But then there's something else. There's the siyata d'shmaya from above. Ilmole HaKadosh Baruch Hu eino ozro, eino yacholo. You're locked in a battle. Malay, Hashem is with you right there, inside the world. And you need a lot of help. And there are resources out there for you. There's Zakanim, there's Moshe Rabbeinus in every generation, and there's great tzaddikim from previous generations, like I'm going to see in Morocco, who shower upon Klal Yisrael spiritual strength. Where does the greatest example of that? Right here by the Meraglim. Where does Kalev go? That's an example of Saviv Kol Almin, the upper influence of our greatest tzaddikim and our avos and imos, the power invested in us continuously by Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaacov, and everybody else, and all the Ushpizin and all the tzaddikim. That's called Saviv Kol Almin. It's like the sun that's always shining. We may turn away from the sun, but the sun is always shining. Okay? Moshe Rabbeinu had departed from the level of Malek Kol Almin, and he had entered a new realm, which tzaddikim enter when they pass away from this world. That's what the Tikkun Zohar says, and it's from the Alter Rebbe, this idea, Perek Chav Ches in Tanya. He says, when a tzaddik dies, he's more with his students than when he's in his lifetime. Because there's no soul restrictions on the tzaddik. So the full power of his neshama is available on some level to those who will attach themselves to him in prayer, in learning Torah, in emulating his ways, in trying to be like that tzaddik, in trying to draw strength from those, our Rabbeim and our teachers, and from one another. And from even that good old Zakain who used to be with me, my best buddy, who when I had a flat tire in the middle of the night in the freezing cold, came out and changed it for me. And that guy gave me strength. That's the one who gives us chizuk when we're down. Those are also people we draw strength from, but those are Malek Almins. They're right with me in the trenches. They're with me in the trenches. But then there's those who've gone beyond that, but they're still available for me, but not in the same way. Moshe Rabbeinu is Saviv Kol Almin. Moshe Imenu is Malek Almin. Miriam had to come to terms with the fact that that no longer was available. Now, one last thing. Why the 20th and why the nuns and why these 7 Sifrei Torah? Just let's close it up. How many days was the trip to Eretz Yisrael? Does anybody know? From the book of Devarim in the very beginning. Well, they've covered a lot of ground in 3 days, but how much was the total trip? What does it say at the very beginning of Devarim? Achad asar yom michorev. Moshe spoke on the last day of his life from Arvos Moav, which was a whole big, on the footsteps of entering Eretz Yisrael, 11-day journey from Har Sinai. Not a lot of time. What day did they leave? Do the math. 20th of Iyar. What day would they have arrived in Eretz Yisrael? Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Gee, what happened on Rosh Chodesh Sivan the first time around? They arrived at Har Sinai. Now which mountain are they likely to arrive at? Yeah, to Har HaMoriah. They would have been in Har HaMoriah, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, and which just shows what the Ramban also says all along, that Moriah was a warm-up. Har Sinai was just a warm-up for the Beis HaMikdash. What was at Moriah was a model of the Mishkan, comes down, and they take that Mishkan and they would have placed it right on Har HaBayis. Imagine. With Moshe Rabbeinu in the lead, and then it would have developed into the Beis HaMikdash. I don't know how much time that would have taken. Maybe it would have been instantaneous, and maybe it would have taken centuries. Who knows? But that's what was supposed to happen. That's why they left on the 20th, because they had 11 days to go. And then, they would have been ready to, they would have been really in place. Now, what day was that in the journey? If you want to go from the Pesach of Sheni, right? Oh. What happens on Pesach Rishon? Their old first Pesach Rishon, they left Egypt, right? They left Har Sinai. Well, they began the preparations to leave Har Sinai, right? With Pesach Sheni, that was the thing. Well, how many days was it from Pesach at that point when they left? Well, you take the 20 days of Iyar, right? And you take another 15 days going back to the Pesach that everybody kept, not the Pesach Sheni, but that's 35 days, right? 35 days, very interesting. That's exactly 5 weeks. That's as far, if you count in terms of our Sfiros, up until the Sfira, the 5th Sfira, which is Hod. That takes you up to Moshe and Aaron. That's as far as they got. The 20th of Iyar represents the 35th day. You understand? From the Pesach that they did in the Midbar, which was right on the 14th of Nisan, 14th, 15th of Nisan. It was a real Pesach, and then you add 35 days, 5 weeks, and you're at the 20th of Iyar. What did you finish? Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod. That Sfiras HaOmer that went on in that second year, they started to move. Day 1 of Yesod. Yesod is connected to Yosef, which is Mashiach ben Yosef. And then the last week is Malchus, Mashiach ben David. That's what was missing. And they got 3 days into that journey, and they didn't get past it. And we've been on that journey for thousands of years. Thousands of years. But it began with the problem of Ayu Am Kimis Onanim Ra. The bad, lousy attitude. The lousy attitude. The attitude of complaint and crying, with which we suffered when the Milagrim come back. They say, you did a Bechia Bechinam. I'm going to give you something to cry about. Bechia Ladoros. Crying and kvetching, and is not the persona of a shaliach who's empowered by the mission and the cause that they're on. When somebody has a mission and a cause, they're not complaining. They can put up with an awful lot. I once heard a story, and we'll close with this, about a guy who fought in 48 underground. He was in the underground in 45, whatever, with Menachem Begin or something like that. He said when they were fighting the British, they had the British wanted to take them and hang them. They had to hide for their lives. They didn't have food. They didn't have a bed to sleep in. Every night they were hiding in a different place. And afterwards came the independence, and he had a job and he lived a life. And they asked this man, he goes, well, aren't you glad that you're finished with that very day? And he says, I never had more fun than the day where I didn't have a bed and I didn't have a morsel of bread, but I had a cause.
Is that why in the Torah, in the Torah says that I sent you out to go because you didn't serve me with joy? So this is the disononym that is carried on throughout.
Yeah, but what it means is they weren't part of the cause, and that's what we have to be, a shliach. I just read a story just now from the Bavitcher Rebbe that once someone came into him and he was crying, and he never cried. He wasn't a crier. He didn't cry about the Holocaust. Anything. He was just, let's do. It was all energy in doing. He says, why are you crying? He says, there's a family that they sent out their last child to go on shlichus to the opposite end of the world. And I'm crying for that mother. Is the mother crying? No, she's sending out her child with joy. Who knows how much she'll ever see that daughter. Rare occasion, right? Especially if it was years ago. There's no more FaceTime. There was no FaceTime. There was no this kind of travel. But she sent out that child with joy. So I'm going to cry for her pain. But when you are a true shaliach, you're energized, you're with simcha. You don't come back with complaints. You don't come back with problems. You come back with enthusiasm, like Kalev. Alo na'aleh ki yachal nuchala. We're going to find a way because we are on a noble mission. And Hashem will help us. God helps those who will help themselves. So why the backward nuns? The backward nun is the number 50. 50 would have been the completion of that period of time. Had they gone forward, they made it to day 35. But had they made it to day 50, what would have happened? Well, 11 days, meaning on day on day 46, they would have arrived at Har HaMoriah. Then how many days did it take to get ready for Matan Torah? The last days? Yeah. And 3 days later, on the 50th day, right, of that journey, you would have put up the Beis HaMikdash. But now the nuns are backwards. The 50s are backwards. We have to go back and pick up from where we left off, from that day 35, and march through Yesod, which is the tzaddikim who sustain us in Chutz La'aretz and bring us back to Eretz Yisrael, and Malchus Beis David, who is the spiritual force that lifts us up so that we can be worthy of the Saviv Kol Amim, which is the process that we're in. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful couple of weeks, and Be'ezus Hashem, we will see you. I will be away 2 Mondays.